John Owen-Jones, thank you very much for coming.
Nice to be here.
Pleasure to be here at the Bordeaux Quay, which is a lovely venue.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, Bristol is a lovely town.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm biased, but...
Well, of course, yeah, but, you know, it's close to Wales, where I'm from, so it gets that as a bonus as well. So it's just a short hop across the water and I'm back home, you know.
So what part of Wales do you live? Are you Cardiff?
Well, actually, I live in London, because that's where all the work in theatre is, really. But my family are from a small town called Buryport, near Llanelli, which is near Swansea, which is near Cardiff, which is near Newport, which is near Bristol.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It works in that nice...
Yeah, it does, yeah.
In that nice way. Yeah, it's a lovely city, actually. Well, lovely country, Wales, you know. It's a pleasant place to be. And,
yeah. And the people are amazing.
They are lovely. And you're here, obviously, to play Phantom of the Opera. Well, Phantom in Phantom of the Opera.
The Phantom in the Phantom of the Opera, yeah.
Exactly, and it's been going well, because this is your last week, isn't it?
But last week in Bristol, yeah, and the audiences have been phenomenal. This production of Phantom is brand new design. It's been running in the West End for 25 years now, and to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the show, Cameron Mackintosh decided it would be a great idea to reinvent it. So a lot of the diehards, you know, because there's a really strong voracious fan base for Phantom, you know.
So quite daunting, really.
Yeah, very daunting.
Yeah.
But you know, but Cameron's very brave. You know, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. You know, it works. It's worked for 25 years, standing ovations every night in the West End. But Cameron, I suppose, wanted to breathe new life into it and get it going for another 25 years, and that's kind of what we've achieved. And the audiences, they're going crazy. They're loving it.
So it is absolutely a reinvention of the show.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's different elements in it, or...
Well, it's a completely brand new set design, and that's quite a big thing for Phantom, because integral to the success of the show was Maria Bjornsson, the original designer. Her design was, you know, probably the most perfect theatrical design that's ever been and ever will be.
But
you know,
so intricate and
exactly, and serves the story well, and it has these jaw-dropping wow moments, you know. So when Cameron decided to reinvent the show, you know, that was obviously the big sticking point. So the concept of this new version is that it tells more of the story of the backstage life of the theatre,
right?
And you know, it comes from the angle that the Phantom is actually a man. You know, he's not a ghost, he's a man. And so we try and tell that aspect of the story and try and make him more human, you know. And it seems to be working.
So if you had to change, I mean, because obviously your portrayal of the Phantom is going to change as you develop, but has it been particularly significant because of this new version?
Oh, very much so. I got 2 years ago. We took Les Miserables out on tour for the 25th anniversary, and we started from scratch with that as well. I mean, again, that's a very famous production, and it works brilliantly. But Cameron decided to do the reinvention on the 25th year of Les Mis with a tour, and I got to play Valjean, and I got to reinvent Jean Valjean, you know, an iconic character, and I've been able to do the same with this. We got the script and the music, and we went through it and said, why are these things said, and why are they said when they're said, you know, and we were able to build on that, and that's what the original team would have done. Often when you go into a show that's long running, you have to kind of fill someone else's shoes, and the reasons why things happen in the story are lost over a mist of time, and the director forgets why, and the actors forget why it's there, and even myself, you know, when I'm performing, I've you know, like in Music of the Night, for example, a big number the Phantom has in Act 1, I do something in rehearsal, we realise why it's there, and it works brilliantly, and then after like 6 months of playing it, I'm more interested in other stuff, and then I forgot why I've made that choice. So, and you have to do that all the time, you're constantly reinventing it. But when we sat down with the script, we saw the places that were problematic, the places where the show didn't really work, and we've tried to kind of massage it and change it and make it more up-to-date and current and make the storytelling much more clear.
And it's quite collaborative in that way. You've got quite a lot of say over how you play the character. It's not dictated to you.
No, not really. I mean, I liken it to any Shakespeare, really, where, you know, they're constantly reinvented and redirected, and new ideas are brought to Hamlet, for example, or King Lear, you know. And that's kind of what we've done with Phantom. A lot of people said, oh, you can't change Phantom because it is what it is. But yeah, of course you can, because at the end of the day, it's still a story, and there are many different ways to tell a story.
I was going to say, because it's quite, obviously when you first play Phantom, it's really daunting, because it's such a iconic iconic image. But because you've played it so much now, because you've played it in London and taken it on tour, is there kind of an ownership you feel over it now?
I suppose there is. I never really thought about that before. When I first took over the role, I was very aware of the reaction of the fans, spelt with a PH, right? And but then I came to realise over time that I'd never be satisfied artistically doing what I thought someone else wanted. So in the end, I eventually did what I wanted, and put myself into the character, into the role. And I think that's what's been the most rewarding thing, was like applying myself to it. And in this new version, of course, I've been able to, do things the way I want, but within the remit of the script, of course.
So you looked at how it was done before and took
ideas very much so. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a big fan of history, so you look at what's been happening before, and then you can apply that to what you're doing now, and it's very true Phantom.
Absolutely. So is it very different from performing in London, taking a show on the road?
Yeah, absolutely. London is very much a tourist industry, I remember when I did Les Mis once, the entire front row were Japanese tourists who'd obviously just got off the plane and were asleep for the entire show, and they still woke up at the end and gave us a round of applause.
Really?
And this standing ovation, and they were fast asleep for the whole show, and that's very indicative of what it's like in the West End. But of course, when you come out on tour and you come to cities which don't get big shows like Phantom or Les Mis, they go overboard. They're really very appreciative indeed.
Well, because people have been waiting for a long time for it to come back on tour. Because when was the last time? Was it?
It would have been about 15 years ago, I think.
Which is I think because part of it is that it's just a massive show and such a feat to get it on the road. Yeah. So is that where quite a lot of the stylistic changes have happened?
Absolutely, yeah. The new version, I think, has been in the planning stage for about 10 or 11 years.
Wow.
But they hadn't been able to find the right set design, One of the big things about the show, of course, is the chandelier dropping. And we don't do that in this version because it's hugely expensive and difficult to tour that set, simply because you have to take the roof off the theatre to put the chandelier in. And it has its own kind of metal structure that fits on top of a building. They have to close streets down, get cranes in. With this one, the chandelier comes in through the back door, gets hoisted up. And it's still there, it's still very effective what we do, but the impracticalities of touring the last production are removed now. So also a very new thing that they do is they move, this set, by the way, I should say, is much bigger than the West End, but because it's designed to be toured, it's easier to move. So they can take the whole thing. It's like there's 26 articulated lorries. They can take the whole thing down and put it back up in 3 days. Really? But with the original set design, I think it took about 2 weeks.
Didn't they have 2 on the last one? So
that's right, they did, So of course, that's double the cost.
Yeah.
So therefore, when they moved cities, they would sit down in a city for 3 or 4 months, and they'd have to sell that many tickets to pay for the move. So,
well, I think they were saying because at the Hippodrome they had to reinforce the roof and everything to get the chandelier. Yeah. But you've obviously played the Hippodrome quite a few times. Nice venue.
Yes, lovely venue. Yeah, lovely. What's interesting about the Hippodrome? It's I think it's a Matcham design theatre. It's a very famous theatre designer who did the Buxton Opera House and a lot of beautiful theatres. And he's put in a cupola on the top, the roof. Which moves, which can open.
To ventilate the...
Yeah. And I remember when I did Les Mis there, back in 97 or 98, I think, in the last century, it was a hot day, and, we did a matinee, and it got hotter as the evening went on, and so they opened the roof in the interval of the second show of the day. So I'm sitting on the barricade, singing Bring Him Home, and look up, and I can see the stars. Yeah, it was magical.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. No, I think it's a really special venue in many ways, and for such a big theatre, quite intimate as well. You kind of feel... Do you kind of, as you're touring around, you kind of get favourite
Oh, yeah, definitely.
theatres?
Yeah, definitely. On this tour, I'm playing venues I've never been before. We're going to Dublin next, and I've never been to Dublin. The Leeds, is it the Opera House? The Grand, what's it called in Leeds? But apparently that's a beautiful theatre, so Phantom should fit in. Phantom fits in very nicely at Hippodrome. It's a kind of a classy theatre. It doesn't really work in the modern auditoria so much. But it's got that kind of sense of history isn't there in the auditorium,
because it's a very atmospheric... the atmosphere surrounding it, the environment surrounding it is very important.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. That's one thing I remember when I went to Broadway for the first time to see shows. They kind of theme the theatre a little bit as well. So, you go into the venue and you kind of get the sense of the show as you walk in. You don't really get that so much in this country. You go in, you sit down, you watch the show, you leave.
Have you seen Phantom in?
Yeah, I saw it on Broadway. That's a fantastic theatre, because I did Les Mis on Broadway for 4 months, I think, and I was in the theatre next door. And it was very interesting because there were 4 theatres all back to back, and of course space is tight in New York. So, and there was you could literally walk off stage in one theatre, open a door, and walk on stage in another theatre. And so I remember Chorus Line was happening, Phantom was happening, and I think Spamalot was there. And at some points, there would be cast members from all these shows wandering in, and standing at the side of the stage, and you'd see someone, dressed in as a dancer from Chorus Line, and you were on stage in your rags and Les Mis, and what are they doing in the wings?
Just surreal.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. How different is it, the culture of the West End to Broadway? Is it?
Oh, it's very similar. Very similar indeed. Yeah. Again, it's very much a tourist industry. How can I explain the difference? I suppose it's a family, really, in the West End. Everybody knows each other, and that's kind of true of New York, but not so much, because it's much more a job over there. You come in, you do your job, you go home. But in the West End, everybody kind of knows each other, So that was kind of the only odd thing about it. Otherwise, it was exactly the same.
Yeah, and I suppose just great to broaden your horizons going there as well, and fresh new audiences.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, and actually, when I was there, I went over to Las Vegas and saw the Phantom of the Opera in Vegas as well.
Yeah.
So
now, how was that? Because don't they have sort of a river running through?
No, they don't. No, there was talk of that, though. There was talk of that. The chandelier starts off in 8 different places, and it kind of moves over the audience and then twists and turns and then forms the chandelier above your head. It's quite spectacular. It's closing soon, though, sadly, but because I would love to have done it over there.
Yes. Yeah.
But there was talk of they were going to have a glass floor in the auditoria, and you'd see the Phantom's boat going underneath in the lake, but of course that would have been ridiculously expensive.
Well, absolutely, but I mean they've got the money, and if they're going to do it anywhere, they do it there.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And that's
But yeah, I suppose that's the thing with Phantom, because it can go really deep like that. There's so many things, or you can settle for, because you make quite a few stylistic decisions, I suppose, like the chandelier not falling. I suppose there might be some people that weren't happy with that. Maybe.
Yeah, no, but there's something else that's there.
Right, okay.
I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen
absolutely.
the show, but there's something else that's there, and people do scream with shock and horror. Usually, they all have a big fright at the end of Act 1. So.
Yes,
and that's kind of the point.
Right, yeah, but you have to make these big stylistic decisions sometimes.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah, I mean, what's that phrase? Necessity is the mother of invention, right? So obviously, to tour this version, they had to redesign it, and if they didn't have to do that, then it would be the same one, wouldn't it? But obviously there was a need to do it, and that's why it's changed.
And Les Mis, did you do that for the 25th? So you were here last year?
Yes, 2010. Yeah.
And was it a very different experience, because it's more of because you play Jean Valjean, it's an ensemble, whereas the Phantom's much more by himself in the production.
Yeah, it was actually. Les Mis is much more of it's much more of a family atmosphere backstage, because everybody's in all the time. Everyone's on stage all the time. But in Phantom, I only ever really work with one other person, and that's Christine. So there were periods of rehearsal that I wouldn't see people for weeks. And so I've only really got to know them as we've been on the road. Like cast members I didn't even meet for 3 weeks. It's just a bit silly. Yeah, it's funny, but Les Mis was very much. It's huge fun to do, and people come back to that show all the time because. It is a big family atmosphere. It's great fun. It's not really a hard job to do.
Yeah, and it's just captured everyone, even though, I suppose it's the case with a lot of musicals, is that they don't go down to great reception by the critics, and then they're just embraced by the... you couldn't foresee, it's the same with Phantom, I suppose, as well, just how much it's been embraced by everyone.
Nobody could guess. People often ask me, why do you think they're so successful? And I always tell them, if I knew that, I'd write my own musical. Andrew Lloyd Webber doesn't know. Cameron McIntosh doesn't know. They know what's wrong with stuff, but often finding the solution is the hardest thing to do. And, Phantom and Les Mis particularly were... right things happening at the right time, very much serendipitous, the right score, the right story, the right set designer, the right director, the right time for people to come and see that thing in the theatre.
It all just slots together. Whereas something like Love Never Dies, for whatever reason, it just doesn't set off in the same way.
No, exactly. I think I think the problem with Love Never Dies particularly was the story didn't need to be completed. That's part of the magic of Phantom of the Opera, is that it doesn't finish. It's left in your imagination what happens next. And I think they tried to fill in those blanks, and it didn't really need it.
Just didn't want it. But it would have perhaps been nice to play that role after playing your role.
Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah, I auditioned for it, and
right, yeah.
But I didn't get it, sadly. But I guess I dodged that bullet.
Yeah, well, there is always that, isn't
there? It's one of those things. I think it maybe was a misguided attempt. It just wasn't ready. I think that's the thing. But that's a great case in point that Lloyd Webber has written some fantastic musicals. Superstar, Joseph, Cats, Starlight, Phantom, of course, Sunset Boulevard, which were huge hits all around the world. But he didn't get it right with Love Never Dies. So that just goes to show that nobody really knows what they're doing. Yeah. It's just there's a huge amount of talent, but an awful lot of luck as well.
We're all just stumbling through, and occasionally, you can't plan for such a runaway success like that.
No, not at all. And even Cameron would admit that he doesn't know how it's happened. And he's very humble in that respect. While he's made millions and millions of pounds off it, he's very aware how lucky he's been.
I think there's a lot of respect for people who are honest about that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's that it is totally
yeah, and what's interesting about Cameron as well is that he's very hands-on as a producer. He almost directs, because he's had so much experience over the years, and he literally does know everything. So you generally tend not to question his decisions because they're almost always right.
Right, yeah.
It's funny, he's got innate skill of pointing out what's wrong. He doesn't necessarily know how to fix it, but he knows that that's never going to work and it won't ever work, so change it. And that's why he employs people like me to come up with a solution.
Yes, yeah, so you've worked with him obviously very closely with this production.
Yeah.
Is that sort of criticism sometimes a little difficult in that he's seeing what's wrong with it?
I suppose so. But that's kind of part of my job, is to take criticism on board, of course, and direction is really criticism. That's not really working, try this. That's you have to face that all the time, and any director or producer worth their salt would be very happy to just cut and change if something isn't working. You should never hold on to an idea just because you like the idea if it isn't working. And that's something that Cameron very much applies to his working ethic, really.
And sometimes it needs someone who's a bit out of it to come in and go, because everyone's so immersed in it.
Yeah, of course,
getting carried away, and something fundamental just isn't working and isn't sticking.
Yeah, it's funny, you have to kind of learn a skill as an actor to kind of stand outside yourself and watch yourself. You kind of have to direct yourself as you're acting. It's really interesting, philosophically, I suppose, that you have to watch yourself perform to other people whilst you're performing. Because you have to be very aware that people are watching you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you become too immersed in a role, like say you become method, and you're kind of like you're mumbling and you're doing all that'll never translate in the theatre because you have to get the story across. So becoming too immersed is a problem. Therefore, you have to stand outside yourself and perform whilst being immersed. Yeah, it's complex.
I suppose particularly in these sort of musical roles that you are. Because it is so much of a performance that it is, it isn't hard, gritty theatre. There's an audience there, and you're kind of embracing them as well as being immersed. Yeah, like you say.
And you also get swept along with the music. That's the hardest thing about musicals, is that you can't apply your own rhythm, right? When you're doing a play, you can put a pause into a line, you can change how fast you say a line, and it changes the story totally. But in a musical, of course, you have to go with the beats in the bar. So
you're kind of fixed. So it doesn't change very much at all then, your performances, would you say?
Yeah, but yes, it does. But in the fact that you're constrained. So it's like having a straitjacket on all the time, but also it's kind of a safety net. Now, I rely very much on the musical director conducting. He's probably the most important person in the building. He holds the band together, he holds the actors together, and if he's too fast, too slow, or if everything falls apart, it's usually down to him. So, that's definitely a very responsible job. But I can push and pull a little bit with that. We work together, But ultimately, at the end of the day, if Andrew Lloyd Webber's written a fast tune, you have to sing a fast tune.
You've got to go with it.
Yeah, even if you think, I'd love to do this slow. You could go to be or not to be. But in musicals, you'd have to go to be or not to be. You know, do you know what I mean? So you have to stay in that rhythm, and that's the big challenge. People don't see how hard that actually is sometimes.
It's being dictated to you somewhat.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now your album has sort of been it's your second album, but kind of a fresh challenge, a different challenge.
Yeah.
Is it satisfying to kind of have a product, sort of actually something?
Yeah, very much so. I remember when I first made an EP, I self-financed it, and a lot of fans when I was doing Les Mis were begging me to do something, and I never really wanted to do it because it's just one of those things. It's like it's a flight of ego, and it's a lot of work, and I was always very busy. But eventually I kind of did it, and the main reason I did it was to have a record of what I could do, you know, and to be able to show my grandchildren and their children and all that kind of thing. And it's just kind of snowballed from there, really. And then, you know, I've done a couple of albums since, and I've learnt a lot doing it, because singing, you know, when you're really close to a microphone as opposed to performing to an audience is a totally different skill set that you have to employ. So I learnt a lot, and I think this latest album I've done, it's the culmination of that. It's a lot of... I'm very proud of it, actually. There's always moments where, you know, you're going to listen to something you've recorded and go, oh, I could have done that differently, could have done that better. But with this album, there's really not many of them at all, so I'm very pleased with it.
Which is really good, yeah, but then you do get the opportunity to work on it. It's not as if you do a performance, then that's what it was. Yeah. Whereas you can sort of steadily, it's like a work of art.
Yeah, exactly. You chip away at it, you know, it's like carving a statue, isn't it? You know, you can read a newspaper, then you throw it away. So that's yesterday's news, right? But with an album or any kind of sustained work of art, it can be analysed, and you have to make sure it stands up to that.
Yes.
You know, do you know what I mean? So, I mean, I produced both my albums myself, because I very much wanted to retain control. You know, I don't twiddle the knobs, but I tell the engineer what I want to hear sonically, and, you know, the rise and fall of the whole rhythm of everything, and that's hugely satisfying, you know. And of course I chose the material, and, you know, I tried to paint a complete picture of where I am as a singer right now. So on the next album I should imagine will be completely different.
But it's so completely your own work, you know. It's what you wanted it to be. So
and that's rare, I suppose, these days, because record companies very much pander to, you know, the public and everything, but my record company very generous and let me have complete artistic reign on it, really.
I suppose it's difficult for you in a way, because you do have the musical theatre background that you need to stay true to somewhat, but then you don't want to be limited.
No, that's why on this new album I've put in a couple of tracks which aren't musical theatre, you know, because the next one will have less musical theatre on it. Maybe none at all, I don't know yet. But, you know, I'm a huge fan of rock and heavy metal and stuff, so I ended up putting on a Queen track, and, you know, I've recorded Thunderball by Tom Jones, and at the end of the day he's a rock singer, you know, and so I've done these kind of little things which are kind of like letting the audience who follow me know that actually that's the kind of thing I want to do as well. So, and I do get the kind of the feedback I get is that people often really are keen to hear me sing something different, something new. It's very funny, you know, when you're a singer, you kind of have to do the songs that everyone wants to hear all the time. You have to do the old material, you know, like Bringing Home Music of the Night. People always want to hear that when I do a concert. But if I was a comedian, they wouldn't want to hear the old jokes.
No,
right.
I think it's
so. But then they also want to hear new stuff too. But they always want to hear the old stuff. So therefore, I have to go away. No, it'll never go away. But so what, you know.
But it's part of what made you. But then there's that other dimension that you want to express as well, I suppose.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, but we'll see what happens in the future with regards to recording. But I've got plans for like 3 or 4 different albums of all different styles and stuff, but you never know. You kind of have to kind of work with what you've got, you know.
But if you have these ideas, then you never know which one might, you know.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I had this particular album was born out of another idea, but the record company were like, well, we can sell it if, you know, you do this, and this too. And I went, okay, well, I can do them both together. And I ended up choosing all the songs I want, but Music of the Night is on, and Bring Him Home are on my first 2 albums, because there's an audience out there who haven't heard the first album, and I got an opportunity to rework the stuff and make it better, you know. So, but on my next album, I can categorically state that Music of the Night and Bring Him Home won't be on there. All right?
It's good to know. It's good for you to set that straight. Yeah. So, are you you consider yourself more of a singer now than an actor? Have you embraced that more recently?
Yeah. Well, I trained as an actor. I never trained as a singer. I never really had any singing lessons. You know, I went to a proper drama school, and you know, I've done Shakespeare, Restoration Comedy, Jacobean Tragedy, Pinter, Chekhov, Ibsen. I've done everything, right? And that's kind of where my heart lies. But as an actor, to make a living out of this business, you have to go where the work is. And I happen to be able to sing, so I do that. But yeah, I suppose that's an interesting question, because I've never been asked that. What I consider myself more now, I suppose it would be equal. I know that's a rubbish answer, but in the old days I was an actor who could sing, but now I have no problem at all with being called a singer.
But yeah, being 50-50 is sort of progress from where you were, like you say, because...
Yeah. You know, I mean, I that's what I do. I sing and I act at the same time, you know, and but when I'm in concert, you know, people consider me a singer, but I'm still acting the song, you know, and hopefully when I leave Phantom and, you know, get out into the wide world, I'll be able to do a bit more straight theatre, TV, film, something like that. Who knows? Is
it stuff you miss, because you've done a lot of musical theatre, which is brilliant, and you're very good at it, but then the straight acting, the Shakespearean stuff, is that something you've...
Yeah, that's particularly, because I always fell in love with creating a character, and being Welsh, you know, the natural rhythm of language is interesting to me. So, you know, Shakespeare particularly I love, you know, so yeah, I'd love to do more of that, but again, you just don't know, you know.
Have you done stuff at the Globe and things?
No, I've never even been to see anything there, because I'm always working. So, but I've had friends who worked there, but I've worked at the National Theatre, worked at Regent's Park and did Shakespeare there. Yeah, it's good. I would love to do the Globe. That would be really interesting. You know,
Well, it's great still to have aspirations in that sort of stuff you can still work towards. And
but as an actor, of course, I don't ever have to retire. You know, you can be 95 and still, because they'll always look for older actors. So it's okay. It's a good business. If if I don't save any money, I'll still be able to work when I'm 95.
But it was something you were saying. You don't really get to see much theatre at all, because. No. You know, you're working, and I suppose that must be hard because you love it, obviously.
Yeah.
To be cut off from it somewhat, it must be...
It is a bit, but I'm really looking forward to going back to see stuff. However, it is ridiculously expensive. You know, and I was saying that I get my wages paid bit, of course, but it's such an expensive night out, and I've got 2 children, and the last thing I went to see was Matilda in the West End.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and it cost us over £200. And that's like, you know, you could have gone on holiday for that.
Yeah.
You know, so you've got to be very careful what you pick and choose. So
yes, but you're looking forward to seeing Phantom when you're not in it later on. You know, so
I'll go back and see this new version of it. Yeah, because of course I've never seen it. So
yeah, I suppose that might be a bit surreal. You know, just watching it, knowing that you were in it, and now you're seeing it. And
it will be. I should imagine. When I leave, a friend of mine, Earl Carpenter, will be taking over. And he's come to see the show twice now, and he can't get his head around it because it's so different to the London show, which he's just been in, and he couldn't switch the London show off in his head. But I'm sure when he's immersed in it, it'll be different. And I should imagine when I go and watch it, I'll be like, wow, this is completely different to how I imagined it.
It's what was going on in your head.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, actually.
Yeah, sort of the dual reality. Anyway, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my pleasure.
It's great.